I've lived enough. Miro just climbed up the ladder together with the elders leading to the land up the lake bed. They were at the west side of the lake. For the first time, he saw the carnage made by the Zixes as many bodies of Malservius were being carried by the others that they found hidden. Most of them were scattered at the banks. Inside the woods, the remaining Malservius from the west fortress had arrived. They were called upon to the lake to join with the forces chasing the Mals in the rainforest when they finished their mission. The plan was to make them all ambush the forces of Leonardo that was coming from the east the next day. Miro saw the Mals with the Malservius. They were those that Ischia advised to pretend as if nothing had happened in the lake when they were freeing the Mals in the lake bed. Marcello was one of them. At the sight of the Mals, the elders looked at Miro. They were expecting that Miro would give the command to kill the Mals anytime. Miro sensed this but was not yet giving in. When the Mals and the Malservius had lined up facing the lake, Miro walked slowly in front of them and looked at each one in their faces while holding the handle of the dagger tucked at the right side of his body. He bowed his head when he reached the last of the Mals who was staring at him. He then went in their midst, raised his head up and spoke. You deserted us. The others left you. They escaped, leaving you behind. But they won't be far. We will find them. Did you know that they killed some of us? Miro paused watching the faces of the Mals as if he wanted to see if his words struck. There was nothing. The Mals were just staring back at him. He nodded his head and walked past each Mal again as he spoke. I see. You approved of what they've done. Your kind killed Malservius while all we ever wanted since was for all of you to live in peace, for you to be with us in setting order in this disintegrating world. We are not your enemies. We have been your friends. We had been your friends. Miro's voice was starting to rise. Why do you have to do this? Have you not seen what we've done? Have you not seen what we are capable of? Still, there was no reaction from any Mal. They were all indifferent to what he was saying. Miro looked down to the ground once more as he turned his back and stared at the waters of Mathipus. He pulled out his dagger from his side. The light was making it shine and his face reflected onto its smooth metal. He felt its sharpness as he turned around and faced the Mals before him. You gave me no choice but to treat you as enemies like the others. It pains me for we all have been together all through the years and just because we wanted to set things straight you left us on our own. You are wrong, Miro. You do not understand. We do not want to be part of your evil deed. It broke the silence of the Mals when Marcello spoke. Miro looked and came towards him. His eyes were glaring. Evil deed. What evil deed? Was it evil to destroy the greedy, the unjust, the ones who almost decimated your race? Haven't you seen what we've done? Haven't you realized what we're doing? You are mistaken. We didn't hold any grudge against those who did wrong to us in the past, and we will never do so to anyone. Haven't you learned? Haven't you known? I don't think so, for since you never desired to see us but as your mere tools to your grand and evil desire. The other kinds are innocent, we are all innocent, they do not deserve what you intend to do to them, to us. Yes, there are those who are evil but they are just a few who were blinded by circumstances. Many others are living honest and respectable lives and it is not fair to destroy their homes and take their lives away. We are all created by the Lords of the Spirit and the Lords of the Soul for a purpose earned. And we are created by them to ensure that their wishes are fulfilled. You are blind, Marcello. The Mals are all blind. Gods desire us to cleanse this world from evilness and greed. We are sent by your gods to ensure that the good ones remain while the real and evil kinds erased. You are not God, Miro. You cannot just make this world submit to your rules. Hey, enough. If it would take for this world to be a better place is just for the Malservius to exist, then let it be. Any moment now, your race will be erased in this world and you will be the first casualties. I regret that I had to do this to you and your kind. I was wrong all along. You all don't deserve to exist. It was at this point that Miro thrust his dagger towards Marcello, but Marcello was fast to avoid it. Miro hit the air and as his body was thrown off his own force, Marcello grabbed him from behind. Marcello and Miro rolled onto the ground near the lake. Marcello was holding the hand of Miro where the dagger was as Ichab immediately reacted at the sight, but another Mal whipped him with his tail as he fell to the ground. The Malservius advanced towards the Mals, swords and axes drawn. On the ground, Miro was able to take control over Marcello as he was able to mount himself on the body of Marcello. Just as Miro was about to thrust the dagger into Marcello's chest, his sight was disturbed by something at the other side of the lake. At this point, Marcello caught the right arm of Miro where the dagger rested. Miro struggled to break loose Marcello's hold. He pushed his arm down against the resisting arm of Marcello until he felt a limb hit his back. The force from the kick of Marcello sent Miro plunging towards the lake. Each Mal prepared at the sight of death coming their way, but before a Malservia could even sway a sword to any of them, arrows fell from the sky towards the dark bodies. Leonardo, the Ibeths and the Sumik soldiers had arrived running out from the woods towards the lake. Flying above them were swarms of Werums who carried Leonardo and the Sumiks to Mathipus. Chaco and the other elders were surprised at the sudden appearance of Leonardo's forces. The males were even more surprised at the presence of a number of a kind that they feared once in their lives. However, seeing the Werums and Leonardo with them made them realize that the Sumiks were on their side. They quickly scattered for cover. Some who were nearing the lake dived and swam towards where Leonardo and the archer Ibeths were. Ichard was quick in commandeering the remaining Malservius to advance and defend as a few shot arrows at the scattered Mals on the banks of the river and those who had swam to the lake. The Malservius fought with the Ibeths that the Werums had just dropped near them. Werums and Sumik soldiers faced the full and remaining force of the Malservius that had appeared inside the woods towards the lake. Mathippus became a battlefield between the Malservius and their unwanted visitors. Some Mals were unlucky to get hit and those wounded tried to reach the other shore. The Ibeth archers with Leonardo started their advance towards the other side using the small boats that the Werums carried for them while the Werums above the sky protected them. Leonardo saw Marcello and the others swam fast towards them. Hurry, father. The Ibeths on boats met the swimming Mals in the middle of the lake. Leonardo was surprised when he saw Marcello and the Mals changed direction that instead of proceeding to the other side. The Mals pushed each boat of the Ibeths towards their own soldiers dropped by the Werums that had formed their attack formation on the other side of the lake. The Ibeths held on as they raced fast shooting their arrows towards the enemy that began to get confused from their arrows and the Werums in the sky. The Malservia forces at the banks of the lake were depleting fast while those inside the woods hurried to give aid to their force and the elder Malservius. Everybody Malservius was thinking one thing: protect their elders who had started to run away in different directions. Some ran towards the woods while Chaco and the others ran towards the passage where they had been. It was too late. The Ibeths had reached the shores and met them head on. Though the Malservius were protecting the elders, their protectors were being shot down by the Werums above. One by one, elder Malservius were dropping dead to the ground from the white sticks of the Werums while the Ibeths clashed with the Malservius on the banks of the lake and those in the woods. Drund and the soldier Sumiks swiftly executed their attack formation without their shields. Their size compared with the dark bodies became their outmost advantage, for each soldier Sumik could take on 2 or 3 Malservius at a time. Their large swords and strong arms were too much against the shields and protected bodies of the dark warriors. Soon, the banks of the lake in the west were filled with dark bodies of the Malservius, the Sumik soldiers and the red-clothed Ibeths. The banging of swords hitting the shields, axes and spears were echoing the woods as both forces clashed with each other. Leonardo saw Marcello and the Mals swam back towards them while carrying with them their dead and wounded. As they reached the shore, Leonardo and the Nugas helped the first Mals that alighted from the water while the Vamoths immediately took care of the wounded. Marcello's face was filled with gladness seeing his son once again as Leonardo quickly hugged his father who fell to tears at the sight of his lost son. Father, where is Mother and Carlo? I don't know, but Miro told that they had escaped. All of them? Mother? Carlo? Where? I am not certain if everyone got out from the lake bed. Miro just said they have escaped, but I am not sure if all of them got out. There is only one way to find out. We have to check the lake bed. Leonardo motioned to several Ibeths who were protecting him to follow him and Marcello. They moved towards the east passage leading to the refinery. They slipped out while the fighting continued at the other side. Leonardo asked Lakhiji and the other Nugas to stay and watch around for any Malservius that may come from the eastern forest behind or those that may follow them in the passage. They entered the east pit leading to the refinery and emerged in a tunnel that was empty of life. They all proceeded inside until they reached the intersection at which several other tunnels were. Marcello led them into the dungeon where they knew the Malservius were keeping the Mals. They were gone. They knew that the doors were forced open. Marcello looked at Leonardo. The Zixes succeeded in taking them all. The Zixes, Leonardo wonderingly remarked. Yes, they went here to find their kinds that were taken by the Malservius. We asked them to help us. Leonardo's eyes were of wonder hearing from Marcello that the Zixes helped the Mals escape. His skeptical perception against them suddenly changed. Do you know where could they be heading? No, maybe they are heading back to the west. No, maybe in the north. The Zixes knew that the west is heavily guarded by the Malservius. They must be moving north. Okay, let's go. We must get to them before the Malservius caught up with them. Leonardo and the Ibeths were about to go back when they heard commotions and several voices on another tunnel. Those voices were familiar to them. Mals. Leonardo's heart beat fast. He looked at Marcello who himself was surprised as he stared at him. There are still others left behind, they thought. Quickly, Leonardo ordered the Ibeths to proceed to where the voices were coming from as Leonardo and Marcello followed. The tunnel was wide but short for the Sumiks that they needed to bend their bodies a little forward. The voices were becoming louder and louder as if some were screaming. When they emerged at the end, they heard the vivid echoes of screams and splashes of water from a large and opened door of Atena. The Ibeths swiftly checked the opening and they saw the workers of Atena being attacked by the Malservius one by one. The Mals were all defending themselves with what they had, pieces of woods and bare arms. Some were running away from their attackers, chased by the dark bodies inside the large hall. The mouths were all scattered in the white area of Athena. Leonardo ordered the Ibeths to attack the enemies, and immediately, the Ibeths responded. They shot their arrows from the top as the others ran down the stairs towards the stunned Malservius. The sudden presence of the Ibeths made them too late to defend themselves. In a short moment, bodies of Malservius scattered the wet soils of Athena. The Mals saw those who defended them but were all scared at the sight of the Ibeths. Hurry, we have to go. The Mals looked at the direction of the voice, and above them, they saw Marcello and Leonardo, who were motioning for them to escape. The Ibeths turned their backs at them and told them the same thing. Though they did not understand what the Ibeths were saying, they knew that they were being told to follow as the Ibeths started to go back up the stairs. Dira suffered a wound, and all the Mals were looking at Dira. He too was not moving and ignored the calls of Marcello and Leonardo as he began to speak with the Mals who had gathered around him. What are they doing? Why are they not following us? Leonardo asked as he went down the stairs with Marcello. The moment gave Leonardo and the Ibeths to look around, and like Ishia and the Zixes, they were amazed at Athena. Dira was giving instructions to the aged Mals, and when he finished, they hugged each other and went in different places inside Athena. Some began to climb the walls while the others went towards the huge revolving machineries, links and compactors, as if they would continue their usual work. What are you doing? Leonardo asked Dira, who he sensed to be the leader of the Mals at Athena. It was the first time that he saw Dira and the Mals with him. We must go. It is over. You are free. Please, come with us. Dira just looked at him and gave a smile as he held his bleeding arm. He spoke. We still have work to do. We are not yet finished. You go and bring them with you. You can leave us here. There is no time. What? We need to stay. You go and keep yourself away from the lake. We will break this place. This is the only way that we can repay our mistakes to the Mals, to the world. Leonardo's eyes widened while Marcello was perplexed at Dira's words. Dira, it's over. The Sumiks and the Werums came to save us. You don't need to do this. Let's go, said Marcello. You don't understand. It is not yet over, and it will never be over unless we do something here. We need to destroy this place, for this is the only way that we can stop the Malservius from spreading their evilness in many soils. What do you mean? Leonardo's words were heard by Dira, but his head was turned towards some Mals who reached the ceiling of Athena. He then looked at Leonardo. The largest force of Malservius is on their way to the north, far larger than you ever imagined. They are the meanest of all the Malservius, and they will reach Agathansha in 3 days. When they reach the soils of Agathansha, nothing can stop them anymore. Agathansha will be destroyed, and soon the other lands will follow. We will destroy Athena in the hope that the waters from the lake will reach the Malservius in the tunnels. They are not yet far. They just left yesterday. Their huge force is now under the great river in the middle north. It is perfect, for they can still be reached by the lake water from above before they can go far. The force of the water can stop many of them, if not all. You must go and warn the Sumiks in case we fail. How are you so sure? How did you know? Marcello asked. All of us here built those tunnels, and everything that you see here. The Malservius who tried to kill us revealed this plan. We heard that their kind had just reached the edges of Tuz using the tunnels. If we don't destroy Athena now, the Malservius may reach the bottom grounds of Hapa, and no matter what we do here, no one can stop them anymore. So go, and leave us all here. There is no time to waste. When they were at Athena, Amal heard the conversations of the Malservius who revealed their plan against the lands in the north, including Agathansha. The Mal told this all to Dira and the others until every Mal at Athena decided to destroy the lake bed, believing that it is the only way that they can stop the Malservius, even at the cost of their lives. They were about to carry on their respective tasks when the Malservius attacked them. Leonardo was about to say something when he and the Ibeths were disturbed by a huge object that fell from above and crashed onto some wooden machineries below. It was a large column of many fused logs that were supporting the ceiling. The Mals were able to detach it, sending it down to the ground, hitting a few rotating pumps, destroying it instantly. They saw a few volume of water starting to fall from the ceiling, and immediately, it fell like waterfalls. They heard cracking noises. Dira was fast. You have to go. Leave us. Any moment now this place will collapse. Leonardo, Marcello, the Mals and the Ibeths were frozen. They were again disturbed when a few columns of wood started to detach from the walls of the large hall. It was designed to hold the other logs supporting the ceiling. It shook the ground that they were stepping on. Then, they heard loud squeaking noises from almost everywhere, the ceiling, the walls, as if the entire support structure of the lake bed was collapsing. Large volumes of water were now seeping out from the ceiling. Athena looked like a large and a long high hall where several waterfalls of different volumes were starting to fill the ground. Leonardo saw some of the Mals in the ceiling fell from unexpected water that swept them while the others continued their respective work. They were all determined to destroy what they built for several decades for the Malservius. My king, we have to go. It was then that Leonardo was awakened. He looked at Dira one more time, who was staring at his friends working at the other support columns of the walls. As it gave in, water came out, throwing the mouths on the pool that was beginning to fill up the ground. You can't do this. You will all die here. The ibeths started to climb up the stairs. Leonardo's hand was being pulled by another ibeth, sensing that Athena was becoming unsafe. Dira turned towards Leonardo and Marcello, who met his eyes. Our time is over. We all have lived enough. Please, Leonardo, leave us. Tell the others to stay away from the lake. Go, please. Save yourselves. Just tell them about us. Leonardo could not believe at what he was hearing. The last time he heard those similar words were from a friend he once knew who thought he was the last of his race. The pumps that were still working had stopped and Athena was breaking up as the remaining logs on the ceilings fell. Leonardo was glued to the floor, staring blankly at Dira, who knew his name. Dira's face turned towards him, and this time it was filled with fear for the life that was still frozen before him. Even Marcello turned speechless, staring at the mouths who he knew of from the stories of his father and grandfather. They were the same mouths who led their race outside Zireplada for their safety. Now, the same mouths were doing the same thing, but this time not only for their race but to the other kinds in the world. He melted at their devotion. Go. The lords of the spirits and the lords of the souls wanted us to do this for all the races in this world. Go, now. Leonardo and Marcello, startled at the loud voice of Dira, and started to back off. Marcello started to climb up the stairs while Leonardo and an ibeth were still staring at the pool of water that was rising fast now. Dira ignored them and went with the remaining mouths towards the other moving wooden machines installed at the sides of the walls. Each of them knew what to do as they went in their respective places. Dira picked up a large wood and thrust it into a lever, then the huge machine started to crank out, sending loud noises and vibrations all over. The other mouths followed, and soon, all the wooden machineries that were still working started to shake and crank, sending heavy vibrations on the ceilings and the curved walls of Athena. Moments later, the remaining logs holding the entire ceiling above crashed, and it was followed by several structures that were attached to the walls. Without warning, the bare and wide ceiling above Athena gave in, and the waterfalls were replaced by a single outpouring of large volumes of water into Athena. Leonardo looked back and saw the raging water coming up fast towards him. He ran towards the tunnel where they came from as he heard a familiar voice calling his name. Run, Leonardo, run, my son. It was Marcello's voice echoing inside the tunnel. He ran inside the passage, and behind him was the raging water that had entered the many passages, looking for its way out with severe force. The ibeths quickly entered the tunnel leading to the refinery as Marcello and Leonardo followed them from behind. They emerged from the tunnel and quickly ran towards the passage where an ibeth was waiting. Marcello came first, and the ibeth reached his hand as he was pulled towards the inside, while Leonardo raced fast against the raging water behind him. When they entered the passage, the ibeth behind him closed the door of the passage. They felt the impact of the mad water hitting the thick wood. A few ibeths had already gone up to the ground, while Marcello near the foot of the ladder. Behind him were Leonardo and the ibeth running as fast as they could. The thick door broke loose, sending the mad water towards them. Marcello was first to reach the ladder, but the fast water reached the ibeth behind them. He was swept. Marcello was able to reach for Leonardo as he got his hand and pulled him up. At this time, the water came and the ibeth behind was helplessly carried by its strong current. Leonardo saw him. He curled his legs onto the ladder and submerged his body as he waited for the lone ibeth to pass him. He was able to grab his body, but it was slipping his grip. Leonardo tried to hold onto something until he caught his armor protecting the ibeth's leg. He pulled the ibeth towards him until the ibeth caught the ladder and raised himself up. Leonardo tried to pull his body up against the current that had strengthened from the volume of water that had filled the lake bed. Pieces of debris were hitting his sidearm and head, and the force of the water was so much for him that his curled legs were beginning to lose grip. He was submerged in the water. Before the water could succeed in sweeping him away, he gathered his last strength, and in one strong pull of his body, he got hold of the ladder with his hand. He started his ascent until his face and body emerged from the water. He saw light being blocked from the top by scared faces, Marcello, the ibeths and the Nugas, all with extended hands. He was helped out till he reached the ground. He saw the ibeth laid on the ground being attended to by the Vamoths. He looked down the deep pit and saw the brown water continued its raging course towards the other passages and openings, destroying anything along its path. Above ground, he saw Malservius running up to the woods chased by the soldiers and the Werums. Several of the Sumik soldiers, Werums and Nugas, were staring at the lake as it receded fast. It was as if the lake water was being sucked in and swallowed by a huge hole underneath. Everybody in the perimeter of the lake felt the vibration of the soils caused by the collapsing bed until the homes of the mouths started to expose and several boats of the ibeths began to rest on the sloping sides of the river bank. The hole below his home above the flat wall was beginning to get exposed too. Suddenly, its gates gave up. The pressure exerted by the sea water behind the limestone walls on the wooden gates was so much to force it open, releasing large volumes of sea water pouring into what seemed like drainage into Mathipus. The volume of water that was swallowed by the lake bed towards the passages under was so much more than the salt water that was coming into from the sea. Moments passed and the shallow portions of the lake bed were exposing, several fishes and lake water animals scattered onto its slopes. There were no signs of Tiro and the other males. They were all carried away by the lake water into the passages. Everybody stared in awe at the sight of the receding lake. Inside the wide tunnel, the largest force of the Malservius was in a steady and determined pace as they marched up north. They had already passed Tuz and on their way down a slope passing the great river from above. Their strong torches were providing light reflecting onto their swords, spears and axes that seemed like several 100,000 glistening mirrors reflecting on the ceilings and walls. The path was muddy. They began to cross the river from underneath until the Malservius behind them were disturbed by a loud noise as if thousands of thunder were about to emerge from the dark tunnel behind them. They stopped and directed their torches from the path they just had crossed. The thunderous sound became deafening. The Malservius who looked behind were frozen at the sight of water coming towards them with sheer force. The water almost filled the top of the ceiling of the passage and it crashed onto the Malservius like hard solid rocks carrying large logs, woods and other debris. The such great force of the flood sent them all towards oblivion. It was too late to even think. The entire army of the Malservius was swept and gone in a matter of seconds.